Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams to all. Thank you all for joining in for our Teaching of Lord Chaitanya study session. So first and foremost, we'll start with the prayers, and then we'll go on with the TLC study. And at the end of the session, we'll also give the words that are Bhagavad Gita words that we're going to meditate upon for this week. So we'll start with the prayers. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadhamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuttapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sachivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namo Vishnu Padhaya Krishna Preshthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradhayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaura Dushe Namaha Panchatattvatmakam Krishnam Bhaktarupa Swarupakam Bhaktavataram Bhaktakyam Namami Bhakta Shaktikam He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Taptakanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Gurave Gaurachandraya Radhikaya Tadalaye Krishnaya Krishna Bhaktaya Tadbhaktaya Namo Namaha Mukam karoti vachalam angum langayate girim yatkrpatamaham vande Shri Gurun dinatarinam paramananda madhavam Shri Krishna Chaitanyam Ishwaram Harihi Om Tat Sat. Hare Krishna. So thank you all for joining us for the study of teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So we've completed 24 chapters wherein we saw how Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in some cases by logical arguments, in some cases by his own humility, by his own sadachar, right? By his own expression of humility, was converting all of the Mayavadi philosophers into Krishna Bhaktas, right? We saw how Prakashananda Saraswati himself was a leader of all of the Mayavadi sannyasis. He also got converted to Vaishnavism, and all of his disciples also became disciples of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu as they all converted into Vaishnavism. So this was the mercy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that even the Mayavadi sannyasis easily got converted because they simply had the opportunity to have the association of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and also to hear from him. Right. So now in this chapter number 25, there is an explanation that is given. What is the difference between personal realization and impersonal realization? Right. We already saw in Bhagavatam, Vatanti tattva vidas tattvam yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. So the three levels of realization of the absolute truth, which are all bona fide, right, which is given in the scriptures, where the first level is to understand that the Lord is the source of the impersonal Brahman, or the effulgence, right? That natat bhasiti shuryu na shashanko na pavakaha. Why does the spiritual world does not require a sun or a moon or any kind of light, right? It's because the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his effulgence itself, illuminates the spiritual world. There is no need for any external light, right? So in this way, the effulgence or the or the Brahman of the Lord is the third kind of realization. Higher than that is the realization of the Lord being situated as Paramatma in everyone's heart, right? Paramatmeti. And then the final realization, or the highest level of realization, is to understand that Lord Sri Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is Sachidananda Vigraha, right? We say Venum Parantam Aravinda Talayata Barhavatam Samasitam Sundarangam Kandarpa Koti Kamaniya Visesha Shobham Govindam Adi Purusham Tamham Bhajami. So Brahma, he speaks this verse in Brahma Samhita when he's glorifying the beautiful form of the Lord, who's wearing nice pitambar, who's wearing nice peacock feather. He's looking so beautiful, Shama Sundar, right? So that is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's having such a beautiful form, who's Bhagavan, who's full of opulences, who exchanges loving rasas with his devotees, right? So this is the highest form of realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is the Bhagavan realization, right? So today we're going to see from teachings of Lord Chaitanya, chapter number 25, more about personal and impersonal realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. What is the highest form of realization, along with some Vedic quotes given so as to prove, because we always speak according to Guru, Shastra and Sadhu, right? We are not interested in anybody's and everybody's opinion. Everybody has a different opinion about what they think is the best, right? But we are only interested in the opinion of Krishna, the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So let us read from here. What is the opinion of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu? Okay, so let me share my screen, and I request devotees to raise your hands and then probably start reading. Yeah, personal and impersonal realization. Okay, Anusha Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranams.
Hare Krishna, Dandavat Pranams. Please go ahead.
Chapter 25, Personal and Impersonal Realization. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. The Puranas are supplementary Vedic literatures because sometimes in the original Vedas, the subject matter is too difficult for the common man to understand. The Puranas explain matters by the use of stories and historical incidents. In Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.32, it is stated, Maharaja Nanda and the cowherd men and the other inhabitants of Vrindavana are very fortunate because the Supreme Brahman, the personality of Godhead, full of bliss, is now engaged there in his eternal pastimes as their friend. According to the verse beginning, Apanipado Javano Grahata, Shveteshwara Upanishad 3.19, although Brahman has no material hands and legs, he nonetheless walks in a very stately way and accepts everything that is offered to him. This suggests that he has transcendental limbs and is therefore not impersonal. One who does not understand the Vedic principles simply stresses the impersonal material features of the Supreme Absolute Truth and thus unceremoniously calls the Absolute Truth impersonal. The impersonalist, Mayavadi philosophers want to establish the Absolute Truth as Absolute Truth has multiple energies. But this contradicts the Vedic literature. Although the Vedic literature confirms the fact that the Supreme Absolute Truth has multiple energies, the Mayavadi impersonalists still try to establish that the Absolute Truth has no energy. The fact remains, however, that the Absolute Truth is full of energy and is a person as well. It is not possible to establish him as impersonal. Can I go ahead, Mataji?
Yeah, go ahead, Mataji.
According to the Vishnu Purana 6.7.61 to 3, the living entities are considered Kshetrajna energy. Although the living entity is a part and parcel of the Supreme Lord and is fully cognizant, he still becomes entrapped by material contamination and thus suffers all the miseries of the material life. Such living entities live in different ways according to the degree of their entanglement in material nature. The original energy of the Supreme Lord is spiritual and non-different from the Supreme Absolute Personality of Godhead. The living entity is called the marginal energy of the Supreme Lord, and the material energy is called the inferior energy. On account of his inert material inability, the living entity in the marginal position becomes entangled with the inferior energy matter. At that time, he forgets his spiritual significance, identifies himself with the material energy, and thereby becomes subjected to the threefold miseries. Only when he is free from such material contamination can he be situated in his proper position.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So, Yeah. So we always give this example of somebody being energetic, right? How can when will one be called energetic? Only if he has energies, right? And if you are energetic, you should have energy, and only a person can be energetic, right? Because energy can have no form, but energetic has to have a form, right? And his various energies, like it is mentioned here, Tatastha Shakti, Antaranga Shakti, Bahiranga Shakti. The Lord has three different kinds of energies. Antaranga Shakti is the pleasure giving potency, right? Bahiranga Shakti is this material energy, Maya, right, which has been created by the Lord for those people who would like to enjoy independent of the Lord. And Tatastha Shakti is all the Jivatmas, right? So even if we may consider that the energy does not have a form, we cannot consider that the energetic also does not have a form, right? Prabhupada says it is ridiculous. Why? Because if the creations of the Lord all have form, how is it that the Supreme Personality of Godhead will not have a form? Then he will not be complete, right? He is having, that means the living entities are having something that the Lord himself does not have. So how does it make the Lord, like that Prabhupada asks, right? So the basic principle is Sachit Ananda Vigraha. When we describe the Lord even as Nirguna, you should understand that we're talking about the Lord not having any material form, not having any material qualities, because the Lord has a transcendental form. He is filled with transcendental qualities. That's which is called Bhagavan. It means he is possessing all the opulences in full, and he says, "It's my energy." Mama Maya Duratyaya. The material energy, the spiritual energy, as well as the Tatastha energy, the Jiva, they will all belong to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we are meant to satisfy and please the energetic. We are all meant for his satisfaction. That's why we've been created. But then when we don't understand that, and we try to enjoy independently, when we try to exploit the material nature, when we try to enjoy independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, then we get frustrated because there is no happiness in this material world, right? In this world, this is Dukhalyam Ashashvatam, as is given by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So in this Dukhalyam Ashashvatam, and when we try to become happy, then we become frustrated. But then what do? We think whenever suffering goes away, that is the time we think, oh, now I'm feeling very happy, right? Because the distress situation is gone. Now we think that I'm very, very happy at this time because the distress is gone. But then we don't know that the distress is just lurking around the corner, right? Because happiness is also not permanent here. Although the absence of distress we consider as happiness, even that kind of temporary absence of distress is also not going to stay for too long, right? If you are distressful also, we need not be worried about it, because we know that this is also going to pass. But we are happy also, we should know, we should tolerate. That's why in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has told us, Sitoshna Sukha Dukkhada, everything has to be tolerated, because nothing is permanent in this material world. We have to continue performing our duties as an offering to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, understanding very well that the Supreme Lord is a person, the Supreme Lord is accepting my services, whether I am performing arati, whether I am dressing the deities, whether I am offering boga offering to their lordships. It's all a personal reciprocation between the Lord and me. In that mood, when we render service, the Lord accepts our services. Right? Ye tamam prapadyante tam sateva bhajamyaham. The Lord accepts our services. The Lord accepts our bhava to serve him according to how much we want to serve the Lord, knowing well that the Lord is a person. Right? If we think that the Lord does not have a form, then we can never worship the deities in that particular mood. That's why Prabhupada always says that we should not consider the Lord as our father. Right? Because we want, oh Lord, give us our daily bread. That's what we ask our Father. Right? We don't want to ask the Lord to become our order supplier. Rather, we want to serve the Lord. That is why every day morning we are asking, oh Lord Krishna, oh Srimati Radharani, please engage me in your service. I want to serve you. I don't want you to serve me. Right? So please engage me in your service. That's why Prabhupada says the best relationship is you take the deities to be as your own children, right? How much you would feed your children. Even when we are unwell, we would never miss feeding our children, isn't it? So in that way, we should consider the Lord the most important member of our family, because that is the relationship which is eternal. that relationship is going to go on for lifetimes, right? When we are giving so much of importance to the relationships of this material body, which of course is important as part of our swadharma, we need to do our responsibilities also, but we need to also give equal, if not more, importance to our sanatana dharma, which is serving, satisfying, and pleasing the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is Satchit Ananda Vigraha, who reciprocates the best. Even better than the most important person in our life, whom we are dedicating our entire life serving, right? If we serve the Lord, definitely the Lord will be more pleased. Then we can please the Lord much more than we can please anybody else in this world. We can be assured of that, right? Even if we try to satisfy and please all of the people who are dear to us in this world, some way or the other they'll be dissatisfied. But because the Lord is not going by our physical offering, right? It's not that our child will get pleased if we make paneer butter masala very tasty. Another day, if there's too much salt, they're not going to like it, right? Even though you've made with love and care that same paneer butter masala, right? But the Lord is not going with that salt in the paneer butter masala, right? He is only going to go with your bhava. Right? Medhavani has made this paneer butter masala with such love and devotion. Okay, what if there is excess salt, right? I will still accept it, right? So whom is it easy to please? Is it easy to please our children, or is it easy to please the Lord, right? And the benefit is also eternal. It's going to go with us for lifetimes, right? And it is also going to benefit our children if you offer to the Lord and offer them Krishna Prasadam. So in all ways, right, it is beneficial for us and for all of our near and dear ones. If we give them Krishna consciousness, if we give them Krishna Prasadam, right, everything, if we do for the pleasure of the Lord, it is going to benefit us and also our near and dear ones. So with that, let's move on to the next section of this chapter. So the crux of this is to understand that the Lord is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who's going to reciprocate with us according to our level of surrender, according to our level of love, and according to our level of devotion to Him, right? Although we may not be able to do, although we may desire to do a lot of things, although we may not be able to do it, but our sincere desire to do it is pleasing to the Lord, because the Lord is situated as Paramatma. However, we can serve the Lord only in His form as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, like that. All right, Sindhu Mataji, go ahead. According to Vedic instructions.
Hare Krishna, Pranam Mataji. Hare Vachila Prabhupada ki jai. According to the Vedic instructions, one should understand the constitutional position of the living entity, the position of the Lord, the position of material energy, and their interrelations. First of all, one should try to understand the constitutional position of the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead has an eternal, cognizant, blissful body, and his spiritual energy is distributed as eternity, knowledge, and bliss. In his blissful identity can be found his pleasure potency. In his eternal identity, he is the cause of everything, and in his cognizant identity, he is the supreme knowledge. Indeed, the word Krishna indicates that supreme knowledge. In other words, the Supreme Personality Krishna is a reservoir of all knowledge, all pleasure, and all eternity. The supreme knowledge of Krishna is exhibited in three different energies: internal, marginal, and external. By virtue of his internal energy, he exists in himself with his spiritual paraphernalia. By means of his marginal energy, he exhibits himself as the living entities, and by means of his external energy, he exhibits himself as the material world. Behind each and every exhibition of energy, there is the background of eternity, his pleasure potency and his cognizance potency. The conditioned soul is the marginal potency overpowered by the external potency. However, when the marginal potency comes under the influence of the spiritual potency, it becomes eligible for love of Godhead. The Supreme Lord enjoys 6 kinds of opulences, and no one can establish that he is formless or that he is without energy. If someone claims so, his contention is completely opposed to the Vedic instructions. Actually, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the master of all the energies. The living entity, however, being his infinitesimal part and parcel, can be overpowered by the material energy. In the Mundaka Upanishad, it is stated that 2 birds are sitting on the same tree. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, while the other is not eating, but simply witnessing the activities of the first bird. Only when the bird eating the fruit looks towards the other bird does he become free from all the anxieties. This is the position of the infinitesimal living entity. As long as he is forgetful of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, he is subjected to the threefold miseries. But when he looks towards the Supreme Lord and becomes the Lord's devotee, he becomes free from all anxieties and miseries of material existence. The living entity is eternally subordinate to the Supreme Lord. The Supreme Lord is always the master of all the energies, whereas the living entity is always under the control of the Lord's energies. Being qualitatively one, the Supreme Lord, the living entity has the tendency to try it over to lord it over the material nature. However, being infinitesimal, he is then controlled by the material nature. Thus, the living entity is called the marginal potency of the Lord.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. This example Prabhupada also gives in the Bhagavad Gita purport, right? The two birds. There Prabhupada is saying one is the two birds go into a green tree, right? Maybe two green birds, two parrots maybe, going into a green tree, sitting on a green tree, they don't lose their identity, right? Both the birds are intact, maintaining their identity. So there is no concept of merging into Brahman and losing one's identity. That's what is the first learning from this example, that we never, even after attaining love of Godhead, we will never lose our identity. We will always have our identity. Jivera Swarupa Hoye, Krishnera Nitya Das. Right? We will always keep our identity as a servant of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. That's one. Secondly, this bird example is given. One bird is very busy doing various activities, not looking at the other bird. The other bird is a super soul trying to guide this bird, but this bird is not willing to listen. Right? Just like us, who are filled with so many material desires, the voice of the Lord is getting unheard in all the flux and confusion that is going on in our heart with so many material desires. I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this, right? But then the marginal energy of the Lord, we have the choice, right? That's why it's called Tata. Tata means the banks of the river. Sometimes it's wet and sometimes it's dry, right? When it's wet, what happens? The heart becomes more smooth, soft, right? So the wet heart or a moist heart is considered to be favorable for the bhakti lata to grow, right? So that's why it is said that we have to make our hearts soft. It's not that by practicing devotional service we become hard-hearted because we are following rules and regulations. No, our heart should become as soft, right? That's why devotees are said to be most compassionate. Devotees are even more compassionate than the Lord himself because they are more merciful even than that of the Lord also, right? Because the devotees at their own risk, they sacrifice everything to give Krishna to others. And that is why the Lord says, one who actually gives out this message of Krishna consciousness is more dear to me than anybody else, right? So in that way, the devotees are those who actually take shelter of the Antaranga Shakti of the Lord, right? And everybody is a devotee actually, right? Mame Vamsho Jiva Loki Jiva Bhuta Sanatana. We're all parts and parcels of the Lord, right? Except that, those of us who have not yet taken to the path of Krishna consciousness, we are still on the drier side, right? So as Tatastha Shakti, we have the free will, whether to move to the wet side or to the dry side, right? We have the opportunity, and even as devotees, sometimes we move to the dry side, right? When we don't have the mood, Are aaj man nahi kar raha hai, chanting nahi karte hain. So that time we have a choice whether we at least do it as a matter of duty. Of course, we are sadhaka bhaktas. Sometimes we don't want to chant. Sometimes we don't want to hear, right? Sometimes our body is also not supporting us. In that way, even in those circumstances, we should ensure that I do my minimum sadhana, at least my 16 rounds, at least 1 hour of hearing, at least a little bit of reading, right? Little bit, right? That will show our sincerity to the Lord, right? In trying situations, right? They say, even in this material world, they say, right? Tough situations don't last, but tough people do. Right? So in that situation also, if we are sincere and we are determined to practice our devotional service, especially the chanting of the 16 rounds of Hare Krishna Mahamantra, then we will get the strength to continue to practice devotional service in all situations, right? So in the Tatastha Shakti, we have the free will, right? Either I gravitate towards the Antaranga Shakti of the Lord, or I gravitate towards the Bahiranga Shakti of the Lord. Bahiranga Shakti means I go into sense gratification, exploiting the material nature, right? Antaranga Shakti of the Lord means complete service attitude. So in all circumstances, we should know in this particular position, say I'm not well, or say I'm not having any taste in chanting, right? In all situations, in this situation, how can I best serve the Lord, right? How can I best serve the Lord is already given by Prabhupada. Following the 4 regulative principles and doing minimum 16 rounds of chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. That is bare minimum that we do in all days and all circumstances, right? That is the bare minimum we have to do. right? Apart from that, whenever the situations are better, whenever time permits, whenever there is little time, we should always try to do much more than our 16 rounds, much more hearing than 1 hour, minimum 1 hour, right? Much more reading of Srila Prabhupada's books, right? In that way, what do? We empower ourselves. How do we empower ourselves? When we please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, when we please the devotees, their blessings is our empowerment, right? It is by their blessings that we're able to practice Hare Krishna Mahamantra chanting. It is by their blessings that we are able to progress in devotional service, right? How do we get their blessings? By serving the Lord, by taking responsibility for in preaching Krishna consciousness. In that way, when we give what we receive, then we will be sorry, one second. When we give what we receive from senior devotees, then we will be receiving more and more, right? That is why it is always said that you give. Prabhupada also in his initial days used to ask everyone, whoever used to attend his class, 1 or 2 classes, go out and preach the message of Krishna consciousness. And then Prabhupada used to bless them, empower them. And when they used to preach and come back, Prabhupada used to ask them, whom did you meet? What did they ask you? Etc. Right? In that way, when we please the senior devotees, right? Prabhupada was so pleased by such preachers, but so totally new, but they were so dedicated to Prabhupada that they went out and just spoke what they heard from Prabhupada. And Prabhupada was so pleased by it. Right? In that way, when we please our superiors, then what happens? Automatically, we will get the strength to practice devotional service and get empowered to preach Krishna consciousness to others. So that is the secret to advancement in devotional service. All right, let's move ahead. Okay, who will read now? Okay, Rajneesh Prabhu, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dhanat Pranam.
Because the living entity can be controlled by the superior teacher, he cannot at any stage become one with the Supreme Lord. If the living entity were equal to the Supreme Lord, there would be no possibility of his being controlled by the material energy. In the Bhagavad Gita 7.5, the living entity is described as one of the energies of the Lord, although inseparable from the energetic. Energy is still energy and it cannot be equal with energetic. In other words, the living entity is simultaneously one and different from the God. The Bhagavad Gita 7.4 to 5 clearly states that the earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, and false ego are the 8 elementary energies of the Lord and are of inferior quality, whereas the living entity is an energy of quality. The Vedic instructions confirm that the transcendental form of the Supreme Lord is eternal, blissful, full of knowledge. The impersonalist conception of the Lord's form, however, is just the opposite. For they say that it is a transformation of material modes of nature and all. Actually, the form of the Lord is beyond the modes of material nature, and thus is not like the forms of this material world. His form is fully spiritual and cannot be compared with any material form. Anyone who does not accept the spiritual form of the Supreme Lord is counted among the atheists. Because Lord Buddha did not accept these Vedic principles, the Vedic teachers consider him as atheist. Although Mahavadi philosophers pretend to accept the Vedic principles because they don't accept the principles of God, they indirectly preach Buddhist philosophy or atheistic philosophy. Mayavadi philosophy is inferior to Buddhist philosophy, which directly denies Vedic authority. Because Mayavadi philosophy is discussed as Vedanta philosophy, it is more dangerous than Buddhism or atheism. The only reason Vyasadeva Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Yeah. So, very, very important point to note here, right? The Lord appears for various reasons to fulfill certain purposes, right? However, even if the Lord personally comes and tells, it's a very important point that Prabhupada is making here. You know, the Lord personally comes and tells us something, like the Lord incarnated as Buddha for certain reasons. He came as Shankaracharya, right? Who incarnation of Lord Shiva himself, right? Even when the Lord comes and says something which is contradictory to the Vedic scriptures, even that has not to be accepted, right? That's why they said Vedic acharyas also they don't take into consideration Buddha's teachings because it was against the Vedic scriptures, right? Similarly, Mayavadism, Prabhupada calls as the last snare of Maya. And in fact, the Mayavadis study the scriptures so much. They are so well versed with the scriptures, right? But not the ultimate purport of the scriptures, which is very, very sad, right? Because we study the scripture so much, they spend so much time in understanding the tattva and everything, in shastra gyan, etc. But it is unfortunate that they don't understand what is the ultimate purport, which is to develop love for Krishna. They want to become Krishna, they want to become the supreme personality of Godhead. That means what? That means they don't have the seva bhav, they have the bhoga vritti. Bhoga vritti means if I become God, what will happen? I will become the enjoyer, I will become the controller, I will become the proprietor, everybody will worship me. Right? That's what Prabhupada says, the last snare of Maya. That means if I want to become the ultimate controller, that is why we are in this material world. We became enemies of the Lord. We wanted to be the ultimate controllers. Why Krishna only should enjoy? I should enjoy. Right? In that state of mind, what did Krishna do? Okay, you go down to the material world and you try to enjoy. Right? And this material world, we try to enjoy. Puna punas charvita charvananam. We keep chewing the chewed, but there is no nectar in this world. Right? There is only frustration. And that when we are completely materially exhausted, akinchana gochara, that time we take the shelter of the Lord. Oh Lord, please forgive me. There is nothing to enjoy in this material world. I want to simply mama janmani shware bhavatat bhakti rahituki tvai. Eternally want to serve you. Right? Life after life. May this be my only desire, that let me serve you. Right? So this is the realization that we get, like the other day we were explaining. Right? There are three kinds of students. One, who hear and understand and then they do. Second, those who experience the beating and then they decide, okay, I should do what is good for me. And the third level is even after experiencing, even after getting the beating, also we just want to continue with our whatever practice we've been doing. Right? If we continue to do what we do, we will remain where we are. Right? If you want better destination, then we'll have to practice devotional service. We have to become more surrendered to Guru and Gauranga. In that we will be able to progress. If you are to continuously doing what we are doing in the way we have been doing, we will continue to be where we are. But we want to progress. We don't want to get stagnant here. Yeah. Okay, let's move ahead. The only reason, Vyasadeva. Okay, Deval Mataji, go ahead.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dhanvat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
The only reason Vyasadeva compiled the Vedanta Sutra was so that all living entities could benefit from it by understanding the philosophy of Bhakti Yoga. Unfortunately, the Mayavadi commentary, the Sharirika Bhasya, has practically defeated the purpose of the Vedanta Sutra. In the Mayavadi commentary, the spiritual transcendental form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has been denied, and the Supreme Brahman has been dragged down to the level of the individual Brahman, the living entity. Both the Supreme Brahman and the individual Brahman have been denied spiritual form and individuality, although it is clearly stated that the Supreme Lord is the one supreme living entity, and the other living entities are the many subordinate living entities. Thus, reading the Mayavadi commentaries on the Vedanta Sutra is always dangerous. The danger is that through these commentaries, one may come to falsely equate the living entity with the Supreme Lord. In this way, a conditioned living entity can be falsely directed, and then he can never come to his actual position of eternal activity in Bhakti Yoga. In other words, the Mayavadi philosophers have rendered the greatest disservice to humanity by promoting the impersonal view of the Supreme Lord and thus depriving human society of the real message of the Vedanta Sutra. From the very beginning of the Vedanta Sutra, it is accepted that the cosmic manifestation is a display of the Supreme Lord's energies. The aphorism Janmadhyasya Yataha, Vedanta Sutra 1.1.2 describes the Supreme Brahman as he from whom everything emanates, he by whom everything is maintained, and he into whom everything is dissolved. Thus, the absolute truth is the cause of creation, maintenance, and dissolution. The cause of a fruit is the tree, but when the tree produces a fruit, one cannot say that the tree is impersonal or that it vanishes. The tree may produce hundreds and thousands of fruits, but it remains as it is. The fruit is produced and then it develops, stays for some time, dwindles, and finally vanishes. This does not mean that the tree also vanishes. Thus, from the very beginning, the Vedanta Sutra explains the doctrine of byproducts. The activities of production, maintenance, and dissolution are carried out by the inconceivable energy of the Supreme Lord. Thus, the cosmic manifestation is a transformation of the energy of the Supreme Lord, although the energy of the Supreme Lord and the Supreme Lord himself are non-different and inseparable. A touchstone may produce great quantities of gold in contact with iron, but still the touchstone remains as it is. Similarly, the Supreme Lord, despite his producing the huge material cosmic manifestation, always remains in his transcendental form.
Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna.
Hare,
Thank you, Mataji. Dhanvat pranam. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dhanvat pranam. Right? So nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. Right? Both the living entities as well as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they are both eternal living entities. They are both eternal, always existing. Right? The soul has no birth or death. Right? Na jayate mrite va katachin nayam bhutva bhavita vana bhuyah ajo nitya shashvato yam purano na hanyate hanya mani sharire. Right? So we are all eternal, and the same is that of the Lord. Right? Nityo nityanam chetanas chetananam. Right? We are all conscious. Right? We are all living. We are all eternal. But eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. Eko bahunam yo vidadati kaman. That means, but amongst all of these living entities who are all eternal, there is one supreme living entity who is the maintainer of all the other living entities. There is one supreme living entity who maintains, who creates all of these small living entities who are parts and parcels of the supreme living entity. And that supreme living entity is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. Prabhupada also quotes, Janmadhyasya yatonvayat yataradas charteshva abhigna swarad. Such a person is fully cognizant, is fully independent, and he has only existed before the creation of this material world. He creates this material world. He takes charge of the maintenance. His energy is performed the annihilation of this material world, etc. Right? So Prabhupada is also talking about byproducts here. Right? The byproducts may dwindle and vanish, but the original, the cause will never vanish. Right? Like the tree produces the fruit. Right? And also Prabhupada gives example of the touchstone. It produces so much amount of gold, right? But we didn't obey it. The touchstone remains as it is. It does not change its form. So similarly, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, although like we also study in Ishopanishad, Om Purnamadaha Purnamidam Purnat Purnamadachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vasishyate. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, as he creates all of these various universes, the living entities, etc., each of them are complete in itself. This material world is complete in itself. Everything that is required for the sustenance of this material world, the Lord has already provided. Right? So, and all of the emanations are complete in themselves. And even after all of these have been created, even after all these emanations, the Supreme Personality of Godhead still remains a complete whole. Right? So, in that way, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, his opulence, his strength and power are described in this verse of Ishopanishad, which is what Prabhupada is also telling us here. Right? What is the message of the Vedanta Sutra? That means Veda Anta. The essence of the Vedic literature is to understand our relationship to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And we understand the relationship only when it exists between two people who are living. Right? So there is no sense to calling the Supreme Personality of Godhead impersonal. Or even more sense, there is no sense to even think that we can become God. Right? Prabhupada says here, that means we are influenced by the material energy of the Lord. If you are influenced with the material energy of the Lord, that means Maya is greater than the Lord himself. If you are equating ourselves to the Lord, that after perfecting my life, I will become God. That means for now, Maya Devi, who is the material energy of the Lord, is putting us into illusion. Right? If the Maya Devi is able to put the Lord also into illusion, then the Lord is not powerful. Then Maya Devi is the supreme. Right? Doesn't make sense. So the Lord, like he says in Bhagavad Gita, Daiviya Yeshuganami Mama Maya Duratyaya. The Maya Devi is the energy of the Supreme Lord. Because the Lord is the Lord of Maya Devi also, she does not have power over the Lord. But she has power over us. We are also eternal. But we are infinitesimal parts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So we come under the influence of Maya, whereas the Lord can never come under the influence of Maya. So that is the difference between our eternality. That's why Chaitanya Mahaprabhu explained the philosophy in a very beautiful way. Achintya abeda beda tattva. We're equal to the Lord in quality, but we are not equal in quantity. That is the reason our eternality, our bliss, our knowledge, right? We all have a little bit of all of this infinitesimal level, right? So when we make the proper use of our knowledge, when we make the proper choice, then we are always situated in our constitutional position. But when we misuse our free will, then we are put under the illusion of Maya. That is true only for living entities, and that is not true for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, because Dharmam tu Sakshat Bhagavat Pranitam. Whatever is the Lord's will, that is only the law. And whatever the Lord says is a law in the court of God, isn't it? And if we want to become part of that Goloka Vrindavan, if you want to develop love for God, we have to follow the instructions of the Lord and the instructions of our Guru, who is a representative of the Supreme Personality of God. And in this way, we'll develop love for God, and in this way, we'll be able to develop a relationship with Lord, and then it will be easy for us to understand that the Lord is a Supreme Person. Right? But now we understand the Lord is a Supreme Person because the Lord has descended himself very mercifully in the Archi Vigraha form. Every day we offer Bhoga to the deities. Every day we offer worship to the deities. Every day we offer Arati to the Lordships. Right? All these are ways by which we develop our love and affection and devotion for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, let's move ahead. Okay, Madhvi Mataji, go ahead. The Mayavadi philosophers.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
The philosophers have the audacity to reject the purports of what Vyasadeva explained in the Vedanta Sutra, and to say he attempted to establish a doctrine of the transformation of the Supreme, which is totally imaginary. According to the Mayavadi philosopher, the cosmic manifestation is an illusory transformation of the absolute truth, which has no separate existence outside the cosmic manifestation. This is not the message of the Vedanta.
Mataji, you're not audible. Hare Krishna. Mataji, you're not audible. Okay, Sudha Mataji can continue.
Hare Krishna Mataji Pranam.
Hare Krishna Pranam.
According to the Mayavada philosophy, the cosmic manifestation is an illusory transformation of the absolute truth, which has no separate existence outside the cosmic manifestation. This is not the message of the Vedanta Sutra. The cosmic manifestation has been explained by Mayavadi philosophers as false, but it is not false, it is temporary. The Mayavadi philosophers maintain that the absolute truth is the only truth, and that this material manifestation known as the world is false. Actually, this is not so. The material manifestation is not false, it is true. But because it is relative truth, it is temporary. Pranava or Omkara is the chief sound vibration found in the Vedic hymns, and it is considered to be the sound form of the Supreme Lord. From Omkara, all Vedic hymns have emanated, and the world itself has also emanated from this Omkara sound. The vibration that Twamasi is also found in the Vedic hymns is not the chief vibration, but is an explanation of the constitutional position of the living entity. Tat Tvam Asi means that the living entity is a spiritual particle of the Supreme Spirit, but this is not the chief motive of the Vedanta Sutra or the Vedic literature. The chief sound representation of the Supreme is Omkara. All these faulty explanations of the Vedanta Sutra are considered atheistic because the Mayavadi philosophers do not accept the eternal transcendental form of the Supreme Lord. They are unable to engage in real devotional service. Thus, the Mayavadi philosophers forever bereft of Krishna consciousness and Krishna's devotional service. The pure devotee of the personality of Godhead never accepts the Mayavada philosophy as an actual path to transcendental realization. The Mayavadi philosophers hover in the moral and immoral material atmosphere of the cosmic world and are thus always engaged in rejecting and accepting material enjoyment. They have falsely accepted the non-spiritual as the spiritual, and as a result, they have forgotten the eternal spiritual form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, as well as his name, qualities, and entourage. They consider the transcendental pastimes, name, form, and qualities of the Supreme to be products of material nature. Because of their acceptance and rejection of material pleasure and misery, the Mayavadi philosophers are eternally subjected to material misery. The actual devotees of the Lord are always in disagreement with the Mayavadi philosophers. Impersonalism cannot possibly represent eternity, bliss, and knowledge. Being situated in imperfect knowledge of liberation, the Mayavadis decry the eternity, knowledge, and bliss of the devotees as materialism. Because they reject devotional service, they are unintelligent and unable to understand the effects of devotional service. The word jugglery they use is an attempt to amalgamate knowledge, the knowable, and the knower simply proves that they are unintelligent. The doctrine of byproducts is the real purpose of the beginning of the Vedanta Sutra. The Lord possesses innumerable, unlimited energies, and He displays the byproducts of these energies in different ways. Everything is under His control. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is also the Supreme Controller, and He is manifested in innumerable energies and expansions. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Dharat Pranam. Thank you so much. So the conclusion, the moral of this particular chapter, or the purport to this chapter, is that the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is in His Satchidananda form, right? Where we reciprocate with the Lord by serving the Lord, by bathing the Lord, by offering arati to the Lord. In this way, we develop love and affection for the Lord, right? Knowing well that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also a person. He has feelings. He accepts gifts. He likes to receive gifts as much as we like to, right? So in all ways and all means, we should offer our services to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that should be ahetuki apratihata, and not according to our whims and fancies. Oh, I think Lord will like this. No, according to Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu, right? According to the instructions that we've received from our spiritual master, from Srila Prabhupada. Prabhupada says all my instructions are in my books, right? Chanting 16 rounds minimum and following the 4 regulative principles, right? These are all given by the Supreme Personality, given by Srila Prabhupada, who is a representative of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Gurus are Sakshat Haritvena Samasta Shastra. All the scriptures say that Guru has to be respected as much as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, right? Kintu Prabhorya Priya Eva Tasya, right? Because they spread the message of Krishna, they are very dear to Krishna, and if we please them, we can easily please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Otherwise, it's very difficult to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead because we don't understand what will please the Supreme Lord. But if we simply please our senior devotees, our Shiksha Gurus, our Diksha Guru, in this way, when we please them, automatically when they are pleased by their blessings, we will automatically be able to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that is in essence the chapter number 25 of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. So chapter number 26 is the Bhattacharya is converted. Right, this is a very wonderful chapter. How Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is engaging in a debate with Sarva Bhattacharya, and then we move on to the sections of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's discussion with Ramananda Rai. Very, very interesting discussion to follow. So tomorrow we will continue this chapter number 26 of Teachings of Lord Chaitanya. Okay, so now let's move on to Bhagavad Gita verse for this week. Okay, so the last verse what we did was chapter number 10. Yad yad vibhuti mat sattva shrimant urjitam eva tattam eva vigachatvam mama tejomsha sambhavam, right? Whatever you find in this world which is wonderful, which is opulent, which is very beautiful, know that to be a spark of my splendor. So this week we will pick up a verse from chapter number 11. Okay, let's pick up the last verse of chapter number 11. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this is a very important verse, right? We have the similar verse, Mad Banmanabha Mad Bhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru Mam Evashi Satyam Te Pratijane Priyosime. Very, very similar verse. That one who engages in pure devotional service without jnana karmadi anavritam. So this is also a definition of pure devotional service in that way. So let me share my screen. So this is the verse that we're going to meditate upon and also try to memorize for this week. This is chapter number 11, Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, text number 55. Matkarma krin matparamo madbhaktah sangavarjitah nirvairah sarvabhuteshu yaha sa mameti pandava. Mat karma krit, engaged in doing my work. Mat param. Okay, Karpagavalli Mataji, your hand is up. Go ahead. Read the synonyms and translation.
Yes, Mataji. Thank you, Mataji. Synonyms: mat karma krit, engaged in doing my work. Mat paramaha, considering me the supreme. Mat bhaktaha, engaged in my devotional service. Sangha varjitaha, freed from the contamination of fruitive activities and mental speculation. Nirvairaha, without an enemy. Sarva bhudeshu, among all living entities. Yaha, one who. Saha, he, mam, unto me. Iti, some. Pandava, O son of Pandu. Translation by Prabhupada Gigi. My dear Arjuna, he who engages in my pure devotional service, free from the contaminations of fruitive activities and mental speculation, he who works for me, who makes me the supreme goal of his life, and who is friendly to every living being, he certainly comes to me.
Yeah, thank you, Mataji. No, purport nahi. We can read the purport. So what we will do is we will try to memorize. Hare Krishna. We'll try to memorize this verse. Shobha Mataji, can you send me the this? Oh, okay, you already sent. Thank you. So this is a verse we will memorize for this week, and we'll go through the purport also. Right? When we mean memorizing, means we maybe read the translation purport and we meditate and contemplate on this verse. Right? Very, very similar. We will be drawn to two other verses which are very, very similar. Right? Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktiruttama. Anyabhilashita Shunyam Jnana Karma Dhyanavratam Anukulyena Krishna Anushilanam Bhaktiruttama. Parmana Bhava Madbhakto Madhyaji Mam Namaskuru. Madchitta Madgata Parana Bodhayanta Parasparam Katayantascha Mam Nityam Tushyanti Cha Ramanti Cha. Right? And even those verses where Krishna is telling Arjuna, why I am giving the Bhagavad Gita to you? Because you are not envious of me. Right? What is the greatest enemy of a living entity? Envy. Right? We are here in this world because of envy. Because we envied the Supreme Lord. So without any enemy and being friendly to everybody is possible only when we are not envious. Right? So in this way, contemplation means meditation on that particular verse. Right? See how we can implement it in our life so as to become better devotees, so as to become better human beings, like that. Right? So this is a verse for today. For this week, rather, we try to memorize and also meditate and contemplate upon the translation, read the purport, and try to understand this verse. All right. Hare Krishna. Jagat Guru Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Granth Raj teachings of Lord Chaitanya ki jai. Granth Raj Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Nitai Gaur Premanande. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. Pranam.